All right, guys, it is time for our first week of math instruction. This is Mr. Custis. I'm the Penguins math teacher, for those of you who don't already know me. We're going to start off with transformations this year, and today we're just going to do a brief overview. So we're going to go through a few different types, and this should help you guys with your IXL practice and your quizzes that are both going to be due by the end of this week. So the first type we'll talk about here is a translation. A translation, simply put, is just a slide, right? We can move it right. This is translating. We can move it left. This is translating. We can move it down, up, right? All of this right now, everything I'm doing right now is translating. A common word that we might use for that is a slide. Right, so anytime when we move something up, down, left, right, even diagonally here, we can call that a translation, right? Pretty simple type of movement, but the word here that we want to use for that as 8th graders is translation. This will all come up again in high school geometry, so it's good that we get a little bit of an overview and understanding now. Next type of movement we see in 8th grade is rotation. All right, so rotation, some of you will probably hear that word and you're like, oh, I know what that is. That's when we turn an image. All right, so right here, I've turned it 90 degrees. Here on this program I'm using, it only turns around the middle of it, the middle of this box right now. We can turn it around other points. I don't have the capability here on this program. So you can see here, we've turned it now 90 degrees. You can turn it 180 degrees, make it go completely upside down. You can turn it 270 degrees. You can even turn it 360 degrees. If you turn it 360 degrees, it's right back where it started. You can't even tell that it's been rotated. All right, so the second type of movement we have here is a rotation. All right, so we can translate, right? We can slide something around, or we can rotate it, right? We can turn it, all right? Sometimes you might see a rotation that moves it, right? If we were to rotate around a point that isn't the middle of the figure, you could see it rotated, actually moves the whole shape and turns the whole shape, right? Our third type of movement is called a reflection, right? So we can reflect a couple of different directions. Reflection, typically, think of a mirror. It turns your image around. That's what we do here. We're gonna flip. We can flip left, right, or up and down. All right, so we can flip. We would call this horizontally, left and right, horizontally, or up and down. We would call that vertically. So let's see what happens here if we flip it left to right. All right, can't really even tell on this one because it just flips over this middle line right here. All right, we have a reflection line, a mirror line here in the very middle of this box. So you really can't even tell that it's been flipped. If you watch real close, you can see it moves a little bit, really quick. Right? It's really hard to see it. I'll do it one more time. Really hard to see that a horizontal reflection here with this perpendicular sign, right? You almost miss it if you're not watching really close. But if we do a up and down and vertical reflection here, you'll be able to see this one a little easier. So watch here. All right, now it's a T, right? So now instead of being a perpendicular sign, it looks like a T. It's just flipped upside down, right? Or reflected upside down. Let's flip it back. There you go. Now it's back to a perpendicular sign, right? Sometimes you may see it flipped over like this line here. So if we have it, this perpendicular sign here on this line, if we were to reflect about this line here that I'm marking with my cursor, if I was to now reflect up and down, it would actually move it down to here. It would just flip it right over that line, right, just to the other side of the line. And you'll see some of those in just a little bit when we do our sequence. And on IXL, you'll see some of those there as well. All right, now I want to show you some sequences of transformations. So this first one I'm going to show you is a translate and then rotate. A sequence of transformations is just more than one, right, in a certain order. So first I'm going to translate my similar sign here. So I'm going to slide it, and let's just say that we slide it some to the right, and then I'm going to rotate it, right? So to translate and then rotate just means that we're doing it in a certain order, right, in a defined order. So first I translated right. First I slid it to the right, then I rotated. I turned it second, right? This one here, I'm going to reflect and then translate. So I got my King of Hearts here. So let's flip it first. Let's try up and down, I guess, first. So it's flipped over. Let's say we flipped over this line here that it was sitting on, and then we'll translate it. So we can translate it maybe to the right some and down some. All right, so I've reflected it, right? I flipped it upside down, and then I've translated it, right? I've slid it to the right and down. Let's look at some of the key vocabulary words we used here. First one, transformation. That's any of these, all right? That could be changing shape using a turn, right? And we call that a translation. It could be a flip. Whoops, I already goofed that up. Translation, not a turn, that's a rotation. A flip, then our reflection. A slide, that was our translation. Then resizing it, that'll be the last one that we do, that is our dilation, right? So translation, changing shape, we can say turning, that's rotating, right? This is the word here that we'll want to use. This is our 8th grade math word. A flip, which is then our reflection. Slide, which is our translation. And then resizing it, either making it larger or smaller, it's a dilation, right? So the first one here, our translation, means moving it without turning it, flipping it, or resizing. So every point of the shape must move, first of all, the same distance, and second of all, the same direction. All right, so I've got two stars here, and you can see the top point in the star moves the exact same amount as the right point in the star, the bottom right point in the star, the bottom left point in the star, and then that left point in the star, right? They all move the exact same amount, right? All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these lines are the exact same distance, and they're moving in the exact same direction, all right? So that's something important to note about a translation. All right, next up, the rotation. And this one's a little busy, but it just means turning around the center, all right? So the distance from the center to any point on the shape stays the same, all right? So here, this point right here where these two stars touch is our center of rotation. You can see here I've marked the angle of rotation here as 170 degrees. That means from like this line right here to now this line right here is 170 degrees. And then I have the direction of the rotation as well. This time here, I made it clockwise. I rotated it this way, all right? That's clockwise. So all the corresponding points are the exact same distance to the center is what this sentence right here is saying, all right? Right now, important thing is you need to be able to identify that it has been turned, not so much all this other stuff. You should be able to see it's a turn, and we're going to call those rotations this week, all right? Our last type of movement then is a reflection. Every point's the same distance from the central line, and the reflection has the same size as the original image, all right? So here's our original image. Here's the image of it, all right? The new one with the apostrophes here, we call those prime symbols. So we have ABC, triangle ABC, flipped over the reflection line here in the middle. Now it's A prime, B prime, C prime, all right? Notice we can tell this is a reflection, right? Because A flipped all the way over here to A prime, C flipped the shortest amount here over here to C prime, and then B flipped all the way over here to B prime. And if you measure the distance from B to the reflection line, that's going to be the same as from the reflection line over to B prime, all right? C to the reflection line, C prime to the reflection line, same distance, and then A to the reflection line, A prime to the reflection line, same distance, right? So that's a brief overview of a reflection, right? You might think of that as a flip for now, but you're going to see that this week called a reflection, right? So important vocab here to note. Next up, sequence of transformations, more than one transformation in a specific order. So here from 1 to 2, we see this has been rotated, right? It's been turned, right? It's not going up and down anymore. Now it's going left and right. It's been turned. That'd be 90 degrees clockwise about the origin here. And then from 2 to 3, we see it's been flipped upside down, all right? This has been flipped over the x-axis here, Now it's below it instead of above it. So our sequence of transformations here is rotate and then reflect. All right, rotate and then reflect. That is a sequence of transformations. All right, just make sure that we have a specific order, right? If you said reflect and then rotate, that wouldn't be correct. That would be backwards. All right, so we want to say rotate and then reflect for this one. Axis, a reference line drawn on a graph. This is hopefully a review. You can measure from it to find values. That's why we use them. Here's a graph with an x-axis and a y-axis. So this horizontal axis right in the middle of our graph is the x-axis, and then the vertical axis on our graph is called our y-axis. All right, so that might be important to know as you're taking, doing some of your IXL practice or doing your quizzes this week. Last thing I wanted you to be aware of, pre-image and image, a couple of terms you might see. So the original shape before any move in the transformation is called the pre-image, right? ABC, that was the original. We flipped it over, reflected over our reflection line. That gives us the image, right? Because the new shape after a move, after some type of transformation, it could be a translation, a rotation, or reflection. We call that the image. So the image will be marked with the prime symbols. These little apostrophes, we call those primes. I call this A prime, B prime, C prime. Anytime you see a little apostrophe here in our geometry unit, you're just going to say prime. So we'll always know which one's our image based on the prime symbols that we can find. All right. And I believe, yep, that is it for our demo video for this week. Hopefully that helps. You all have questions, please contact your teacher. Let us know how we can help. And I hope this helps. Make sure that you complete your IXL P4 and P5 this week, as well as your quizzes assignment, all 15 questions, to the best of your ability. If you don't like your score the first time, please try it again, do better. Keep trying until you're, you've got that grade that you're happy with. I suggest at least 70% for proficient, but obviously higher is better. All right, thanks for watching, and please get in touch with your teacher if you still have questions. Thanks, guys.